level of the highest comes from outside. And we're trying to understand what's the difference. Why is it that way? Seemingly, even in Kedusha, every level has to receive chayas from the level that's higher than it. So how is it different than Klippa, that Klippa also receives its chayas from higher? The Rebbe goes on to say 7 lines to the bottom, Macha Inyan, who the idea behind this is, though surely in a Gamba Kedusha, also in Kedusha, in a Klola, say the Rishkalshus to Kedusha, the general chain order of descent in Kedusha. How does it work? First and foremost, it needs Hashem's will. Hashem needs to choose to give chayes. Like it says in the pasuk Havaya Elikim Emes, that Hashem as the Elikim is truth. What does it mean, truth? So the Rambam explains an interesting definition. What is the concept of truth? The Isa Rambam al pasuk that's brought down the Rambam on this pasuk Havaya Elikim Emes. What's the meaning of truth over here? Hu levadi emes, he alone is true. Ve'ein la'acher emes ka'amitosik, and there's no one else that's true like his truth. What does that mean? There's no one else that's true like his truth. Truth means it's constant. It's always. If it's dependent on someone or something else, then it's not really true, because as soon as that other thing removes its choice to make it exist, it ceases to exist. So even now, it's not true. He says, there's nothing else that has truth like Hashem's truth, that's as true as Hashem's truth. This is what the Torah says. What does it mean there's nothing besides him? So the Rambam has an interesting explanation in the words Ein Oid Milvado. The explanation of the Rambam in the words Ein Oid Milvado is telling us that we are that his truth is not like anyone else. Unlike Chassidus Taich's, the literal explanation, Ein Oid Milvado, there's nothing besides him. The Rambam doesn't go into that. So the Rambam wants to understand, what does it mean? How can you say there's nothing additional beside him? What does that mean? So the Rambam explains the meaning of the phrase in the pasuk Ein Oid Milvado. Kiloimar means to say, Ein shum motzi emes milvado kemoisoi. There is no other true existence except for him that is like him. In other words, there's no truth like his truth. And again, truth means independence. If it's dependent on something else, which is the entire Seder Ishtalshus is dependent on the Eibishter's will, so it's not really true. This also, like he wrote prior to that, the Rambam writes prior to that, he will not cease if they cease. But the other way is true. If Chas v'Sholom, you could say such a thing, that Hashem wasn't there, so then all the other things wouldn't be there. All existences need him, need the Eibishter. He does not need them. Here is the end of the quote of the Rambam. What does that mean in regards to what we're talking about? This means if the will of the Creator will leave them, so then it will be complete and total nothingness. Top of page 265. Everything would be nothing as before the creation. Now the Rebbe brings from the Pasuk Yo that seemingly what we're going to say today before Mincha seems to indicate not necessarily that way. It seems to be that even with him leaving Kaviyachol, the world would seem to exist. It says the Madi, so what is brought down in Pasuk Yo, when you leave from amongst them, from amongst the Kalim of the Esesphiris. All the names, meaning all the Kalim, all the Esesphiris remain like a body without a neshama. What does that mean? The it seems to indicate that at least the body will remain. But we're saying that if Chas v'Sholom, the Eibishter, would choose or would leave from the situation, so then there wouldn't be anything. And from the Pasuk Yo, it seems to indicate there would be something, but they would be dead. They would be without vitality. So the Rebbe says it depends what you're talking about leaving. So the Paschal Yo is talking about Udafke Besiluk Oirakav. What it talks about in Paschal Yo is talking about when the oid of the kav, the line of the kav that goes into the kelim of Atzilus and gives the spheres chayis. And it says, the Paschal Yo says that if that kav, hahu nevio, hiu kineshmasa legufa, like we said before, that flow of the kav is like a neshama to the body. And when the kav leaves, so then so then they remain like a body without a neshama. But if the will of the Creator were to leave, they would be complete nothingness, not just like bodies without a soul, completely non-existent, like before the creation. So therefore, we're still remaining by our initial question. What is the difference between Kedusha and Klippa? That you say Kedusha exists b'chayis atzmi, and Klippa not, because Klippa is dependent. Kedusha is also dependent on the will of the Eibishter to make it exist. So why do we say that Kedusha is alive, it's a living thing, and Klippa is not? So he says, Mikal Malkum still in all, Yesh Hefesh ben Kedusha, the Klippa, there's a difference between Kedusha and Klippa. Kedusha, in bechol seder ishtalshus, the Kedusha, in the entire level of seder ishtalshus, whatever level of Kedusha you're talking about. And the Rebbe is essentially going to divide it into three different components. Bechinas ha'oides, whether we're talking about the oides of Kedusha, whether we're talking about bechinas ha'kelim, the vessels of the spheres of Kedusha, bechein ha'neshamas sh'nishavu ma'oides v'kelim. Even the neshamas, that they were made by the oides and kelim, they came out of the oides and kelim, but they're still in the realm of Kedusha. Since they're still in the realm of Kedusha, they all share this common denominator, Heim Bekiyum Atzmi. They exist and they live in and of themselves. They themselves are considered alive and existing. Now, bring a pasuk for this. Like it says, Hu Kayim Shmoi Kayim, that he exists and his name exists and his throne is set and prepared, etc. So Chassidus explains the who, him, is Koyala Atzmus, is going on Hashem's very essence. Uber Pratis Yoser, if you want to break it down even more specifically, it goes ala Oir, that the Oir is an existing thing. Who Kayim? Shmoi, then his name, Koyala Kelim. That's also Kaya. The Kisoy and his throne, who is considered Hashem, like dwells in and settles in. Kaya Neshamas, it's referring to Neshamas. Neshamas Yisrael Bechlal, that Jewish Neshamas in general. Ubefrat Tzadikim, and especially Tzadikim, Heim Kisoy Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem like sits and settles himself in, upon, and within the Tzadikim. And it says, Kisoy Nachim, meaning, Hine Heim, Bekiyum Atzmi. They have an essential existence, meaning they exist. Now, the question is why? Though the light that comes out of the Eibishter, it's as if there was a time that it wasn't there. In actuality, because there was Atzmus, there was always the Oir that came out of Atzmus. But the fact that there was always the Ur that came out of Atmos is by his choosing. So it's as if there was a time it wasn't there. If not for his choice, it wouldn't have been here. So it's like there was a header. It's like there's a break between Atmos' existence and the Ur's existence, even though in actuality there is no such break. And he explains, what does this mean? It's not to say the light down here below, which is going to talk about sunlight, that a light above to the Ur that comes from Hashem's essence. Hine ma'or lamata, the luminary down here below. Let's say the sun. What is the very being of the sun? What's the purpose? What's the idea? What's the concept of the sun? It's an illuminating thing. That's why we call it ma'or. Ma'or means an illuminator, a luminary. This means that light comes out from it. That is the very being of the luminary. And if there would not exist the idea of light, so then you couldn't call you couldn't call the sun a luminary, because the point of being a luminary is giving illumination. If it doesn't give illumination, then it's not a luminary. Okay, and if so, from the moment that the luminary exists, there's already the illumination that comes from it. As opposed to above, Hashem's relationship with the oil that comes from him, it's a revelation that's dependent and a result of his will. It's dependent specifically on his will. And we see this idea exemplified in an expression that's brought down often in Basilagani and other Mamorim Siddhis. The infinite light of Hashem is higher and higher to no end, and below to no end as well. Now, what is the meaning of these two sides of the equation? This means it's in its capability to become revealed way down below to no end. And it's in its capability to conceal himself and go higher and higher to no end, meaning that he will not let the light shine. It's his choice, not like the sun, not like a luminary down here that without illumination, it's not a luminary. But by the Eibishter, he could illuminate, he could not illuminate. Not only is it two choices, but it's also, I don't know why there's a very low voice. I don't know what to tell you. Let me see over here for a second. Pause this. So based in Yonim Elu, these two matters, these two approaches, whether it's going to be Lamai then cancel Mata de Tachlos, meaning that he is revealing himself, or he's not revealing himself. These are two equal lines in the Ein Sof. There are no, it's not like, well, he's about illumination, so he has like a preference for illumination. And if it's Lamai then Ketz, that's not so much him. No, these are totally equal and the same. As far as who he is, to use the expression, it's no skin off his back whether he illuminates or not. It's completely by his choice. He chooses whether to illuminate or not to illuminate. Like we said before, in the name of the Rambam, that the Eibishter does not need all existences. Now, when it says that the Eibishter does not need all existences, it doesn't just mean the creation. It doesn't just mean us down here in this world. The koi gamkein aloy. It's referring also to the illumination, to the oil that comes out of the Eibishter, that he does not need it, and they do not perfect them, and he's not and lacking if they are not there. Chas v'shalom. Kain harei b'metzias hamoor lo yesh lehaor. That in the existence of the luminary, meaning by the Eibishter's luminary, not the luminary down here, but how the Eibishter is a luminary, there is no idea of light that it needs to be there. That's part and parcel of who he is. Therefore, even though the light was always there, being that he's there by choice, Chassidus uses the term it's as if he wasn't there. Yet, kol mokim in a kol zman, kol zehu koydem sheyesh lemetzias oil. This idea that it's Gilui Ritzoini and it's Kamosha Kodmaya Heder, this is all before the light existed. Abel Kasher Metzad Ritzoini is Baruch Yeshne Oil. But once Hashem wanted, and because he wanted, so the oil exists. In a oil who bekiyum atzmi. The oil is an existence of the essence, not that it's considered existing as if from something outside of it. How come? Isn't it existing because of the Ma'ir? Isn't it existing because of Hashem wanted it to exist? So he's going to explain why. Since the light is similar to the luminary, all matters that are to be found in the luminary are to be found also in the light. That's what it means. Ha'or means this type of idea. So he says, therefore, yesh by ha'inyan the mitziusai me atzmusai. We know that Hashem's very essence comes from himself. And that's why, we're going to mention this soon, only Hashem is able to create something that believes it comes from itself, because he truly comes from himself. Because the oir is ma'ein ha'ma'oir, because the light is similar to the luminary, so in the light, it is also there, this mitziusim atzmusai characteristic. And because of that, it can be understood how light, how oil has to do with creation. If we say that the reason that the Eibishter can create a world that seems to be mitziusim atzmusai, because he is mitziusim atzmusai, but we know oil takes a part in it, because the oil has this mitziusim atzmusai as well. Let's see this inside. But this will be understood what is written in the Geras HaKodesh. That creation of Yesh Me'ayin is only from Hashem's essence. Why is it only from Hashem's essence? Why is it not possible for any lower levels to create Yesh Me'ayin? Because Hashem's essence comes from his own, Hashem's being comes from his own self. But over there in the Geras HaKodesh Siman Chav, he goes on to say that hands-on, who actually brings the Hisavos out, and he explains over there that the world is actually brought into being through the light of the Eibush. Even though the light on itself is like it was preceded, like we said before, by non-existence. So if the light is like as if it didn't exist before, so it's not really mitziusim atzmusai. So how can it create something that thinks that it was not created if the light doesn't have that property? And how do we, another expression of the fact that the light is not truly mitziusim atzmusai, and it's k'moshe kadmei heder, is the fact that l'chein nikra oirein sof v'loy ein lo tchila. The light is called light without end. A greater a description, a more powerful description would be that it has no beginning. Has no beginning means nothing made it. Has no end. There's a lot of things that Hashem made that are infinite. For example, even in creation, we find that Tzva Shamayim, the heaven, the hosts of heaven are kayom and beish, the actual sun, the moon, the stars are existing without end, and the Tzva ha'aretz kayom b'min, that all the species are in this world have infinite capacity, etc., etc. So the idea of without an end is not such a big chiddush. If the oir would be mitziusim atzmusai, so then you would say a greater description of it. You would say ein lo tchila, but you can't say about the oir ein lo tchila that has no beginning, because it does have mipnei shekadmei heder v'yesh lo tchila, because it did precede it. It does have a beginning. So therefore, why do you tell me that the oir is able to create the world? Since the oir is similar to the luminary, it also has this idea of the luminary, that its very being comes from itself. It's imparted into the oir. Therefore, in the Geras HaKodesh Siman Chav, where he establishes that only something that's Mitzius and Atzmus he can create, and that's why creation comes from Atzmus, in that very same Geras HaKodesh, he says that the Oir is the one that creates. The Oir, the Oir, once it is found, once it exists already, it exists in an essential existence. So he's going to go through this mimer to show how the Oir exists in essential existence, the Kalim exists in an essential existence, and the Neshamas. As opposed to, these are all in the realm of Kedusha, as opposed to Klippa. Now we just finished explaining how the Oir is Kaim B'Kiyum Atzmi. In the next paragraph, he's going to talk about the rest. Any questions?
At a higher level, there was no time. So how does he make time when there is no time?
That's why he only says, it's as if it's not actual, because Atmos and the Oir were there together immediately. That's why the term is the whole time used, kimoy, as if. There's also
the whole thing's a month.
Because the Oir and Atzim is very closely related, as opposed to everything else is beyond time. It's not time over there, but level A always has to follow, and not always, but level B always has to follow A, and that's why it's called that it didn't exist until level A brought level B into being, even though there was no time. But we can confuse ourselves, but it's really going to go off topic of what we're trying to say. But you're right, no time. That's why it's only Kemosh, Kadma Heder.
So actually, Paro actually exemplifies this because he believed he created himself.
Yeah, Paro was the epitome of the problem of Olam Hazeh. Okay, let's continue a little bit further. Let's see if we can make a dent in the next paragraph before Shabbos. So too, it's also in the Kalim that they exist with an essential existence. Why? Since Kalim in general, especially Kalim, the way they are in the world of Atzilus and lower, what's the idea of Keli? Keli is something that becomes joined with the Oir that's enclosed in it. Similar to the example that we gave yesterday about the body and the soul. They're completely one. It's a one being now. It's called an Adam. There's no soul and body. There's one being, an Adam. And since the Keli is one with the Oir, and the Oir, the light is similar to the luminary, and therefore in the light there's this idea of Mitzius Musay. So this filters through, if you will, and this impacts the Kelim also. Top of page 266. Also in the Kelim, there's this idea that its existence comes from itself. V'heim v'kiyum atzmi, and the Kelim are also in an essential existence. Liyosam yuchadim ma'or, because they're joined with the light. So too, it's neshamas that they came into being from the oiris and the Kelim, that they are existing with the essential existence. The chalzeh u'b'kedusha. All of this is specifically in kedusha. Why is that so? Why is there that unity and therefore that existence in Kedusha only? In Kedusha there's bittul. And they're joined with Hashem's essence. This is also something in the expression of the Pascal Yom. Maimer, like it says, he and his life forces and his bodies are one. The Ihu Koyala. He is referring to the light of the Eibishter. Chayoy, the life force, the vitality, that's referring to the vessels of the Eibishter. The Garmoyi in Neshamas, and the bodies, that's the Neshamas. This is different than the way a lot of times he explains this phrase. But the main thing is, all of these things are chad, meaning they're joined with Hashem's essence. And therefore, the kaim b'kiyum atzmi, they have this essential existence. They are not existing from something outside of themselves. The oir, they call Metzius Yomashim Yuchad, the entire idea of the oir is that it is joined with the luminary of Kamoy Bar Hashem. It's like, for example, in sunlight. If there's something separating between the light and the sun, the light ceases to be. Because the entire being and the existence of the oir is only when it's joined with the luminary. So to it's above. Beforehand, we were talking about that by the Eibishter, his being a luminary is not the pet, or him being a luminary is not what he's about. And if there's no light, it's no skin off his back. But the flip side is correct. If the light is disconnected from the luminary, it stops being. Therefore, the entire being and existence of the light that's a revelation of Hashem's essence. Because it's bottled and joined with the luminary. Therefore, it also has this essential existence and existence of the essence. So too, it's also with the kalim that's bottled to the light that's enclosed in them. Therefore, they also have this essential existence. Now he's going to bring, where do we see it by neshamas? In the last paragraph, he just made a statement that way. But where do we actually see it in the neshamas? They have an essential bittul to his essence, like it's brought down the medrash on the pasuk. My soul said, what is going to be my portion? My portion is Hashem. I want Hashem himself. I don't want any to be sidelined to anybody else. And he gives an example. It's an example and a metaphor of a king that entered into a new country. And accompanying him was his whole entire royal retinue, his court. He had dukes, he had other appointed ministers, and so on. Chadamar, one person of this country said, I'm going to go ahead and get a patron. I'm going to make a duke my patron, so I'm going to get good stuff. And one said, I'm going to make my patron this minister or whatever. There was one clever person said, Amar, he said, I will take the king. Because all the ministers and the dukes, they serve at the pleasure of the king. And the moment the king can get rid of them. But the king is the final say of everything. That's the same thing the Yidden say. The Goyim say, let's worship the sun, the moon, the stars, this, that, the other. Let's go to some intermediaries, these different officers and ministers. But the Yid says, that Hashem will be my lot. Shamas Yisrael and Betelem Atzmosi is Baruch, and the Shamas of the Yidden are bottled to the Eibishter. Umetzad HaBittul Shalom Atzmosi is Baruch, because of their Bittul to Hashem's essence, the Malka of the king, Loi Mischalef, that he doesn't change, that the Eibishter is one that doesn't change. Shu Bekiyum Atzmi Metziusim Atzmusoi, that the Eibishter is an essential existence, and his existence is from his very being. So therefore, when Yidden connect with that, just like we said by Oiris and Kalim, since they're connected with Hashem's very being, so they are also Kayim B'Kiyum Atzmi. So when a Yid is connected with the king, who is Kayim B'Kiyum Atzmi, Lachein Yesh Bam Gam Kein Kiyum Atzmi V'Inim Mitzius Matzmusi. So therefore the Yidden also have within them this essential existence and their existence for themselves. Being that they are part of Havaya and their lot is Havaya, like it says, my portion of Havayas, and my soul said, now the Rebbe adds another idea. What's the idea of chelik? Like we always explain in Chassidus, that Yidden are a chelik Havaya mimal mamash. What's the expression chelik? We don't call ourselves a ha'ara of Hashem. We're not a ray of Hashem. We are a part, we are a portion, we are a piece. What does a piece mean? It's the very same material, it's the very same thing of the est. But it's only a part of it. Like I remember one of my first mashpim explaining, you could slice up an apple into very, very, very small pieces. But the smallest piece is still going to be an apple. It's not going to be something else. Oir is not ma'ir. Light is not the Eibishter. So the neshama, which is a chelik of the etzem, so he's one. Therefore, the neshamas are an essential existence. And now to wrap this whole topic up, the cholzo b'kedusha dafka, this idea that they exist in an essential manner because they're joined with the Eibishter is only in kedusha. Why? Because kedusha sheyesh ba'inin habitol, and kedusha there is the idea of bitol. And next week we'll speak about how in Klippa there is no bitol, and therefore in Klippa there is no kiyum atzmim. Okay, we'll stop over here. Have a wonderful Rosh Chodesh. Any questions?